This Bulova is fantastic, just so long as you don't try and use it for its intended purpose. Seriously. Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Yeah, interesting way to start a video, though let's be honest, it's not the first time I have expressed that particular sentiment. I mean, how many dive watches have I reviewed over the last 4 years that are completely unsuitable for the purpose of using whilst actually diving? Today it's a twist on that theme. It's a pilot's watch you would not want to use if you were actually flying a plane, or at least it doesn't work as it should. To be honest though, that doesn't make me love it any less. I think it's gorgeous. It's a Bulova A15, a watch that wasn't really on my radar until I made a top 10 pilots watches under $500 video earlier on this year and forgot it. Somebody left me a comment and said, "Hey Jody, where's the A15? I must admit my love for Bulova is very narrow and very conditional. I really only like their retro reissues. I think their contemporary pieces are not really my cup of tea, shall we say." Now you saw the pop-up, I'm sure. This one was sent to me for free by JOMASHOP. I do not have to send it back. All they ever ask is that if you're interested in this or pretty much anything else, I leave a link to it in the description of the video, which I will do. $310. I reckon that is a very, very fair price for a very handsome looking watch. They're out of stock at the moment. You can send them your email address and they will notify you when they are back in stock. So let's have a look at this Bulova then. Let's have a look at what it does well and let's have a look at what it doesn't do quite as well. Right, while I'm taking out the box, let's talk about the backstory of this particular model, the A15. I referred to it in the intro, or at least I suggested it was a retro reissue. That's not technically true because to be a retro reissue, you have had to have been issued in the first place, and this watch never actually saw market. In 1945, the US Army Air Force were looking for an elapsed time watch, and Bulova made approximately 500 of these, which were distributed to airmen at the time. But the design obviously for whatever reason was rejected by the US Army Air Force, so it never went into full production, which is kind of a shame, but it doesn't really matter to us, does it? Because we've got our own version of it now. Now, I've already featured this one on the channel before. I unboxed it a couple of months ago, and when I did, I referred to its inner rotating bezels as a second time zone tracker, a GMT function, which is wrong. As this very polite commenter pointed out, "Great video, Jody. By the way, you're completely wrong. It's an elapsed time watch, allowing a pilot to set a starting point and then count up to a maximum of 12 hours after that starting point. I guess they could then calculate distance and speed on that basis thereafter." So I may as well show you how that works, as that is this watch's USP. Standard crown, push-pull crown here operating the movement. It hacks, I'll show you that in just a second. And two identical crowns apart from they're unsigned at the 2 and the 4. The top one operates the outer bezel. That is a 1 hour timer, so you can time that in minutes. The inner one operates an inner rotating bezel with up to 12 hours of timing potential. If you want to time up to 12 hours, you set your starting point where the hands are right now. So that one I line up with the hour hand. This one I line up with the minute hand, and I'll just demonstrate it by pulling out the crown here and rolling it on. So there we are. That is 1 hour and 25 minutes after you started the timer. So as discussed, pilots can calculate distance and speed, or if they need to travel in one particular direction for a set amount of time to reach their target. This watch could have helped them do that. But unfortunately, it is unlikely to have offered much assistance due to those crowns being very, very easy to operate by accident. More on that later. But this is a cracking looking watch, I think. I'll chuck in a bit of macro early for you. Don't worry, there'll be plenty later on, including some super close-ups to show you just how good the printing is on that dial. Now, classic military looks. Normally, this many Arabics on a dial would freak me right out. 4 different sets of Arabics. I mean, just look at it. But they pull it off perfectly. I think there's just enough space to let the dial breathe. It doesn't look cluttered, it doesn't look crammed, it doesn't look crushed, and there is a minimum of text. No automatic, no 30 meters of water resistance, no 21 joules, none of that nonsense, just Bulova printed there very neatly above the pinion. So I think they got the looks of this one just about perfect. I think they got the size of this one just about perfect as well. I find pilot's watches the most difficult of all to get right, to find that Goldilocks porridge. Personally, I find 40s too small and I find 44s too big, so kind of 41, 42 is where it's usually at for me. They could have shrunk this one a little bit. It certainly would have been more authentic. It would have been more akin to the original not quite issued watch, but I think most people will get away with this one nicely. I suspect though it is designed for guys with bigger wrists, so yeah, bigger wrists are going to suit this one better. But 42 millimeters in diameter, 14 mil thick thanks to a big piece of double dome sapphire crystal. That is a bang on 50 mil lug to lug. 20 millimeter lug width, great choice, 4220, slimming it down rather than bulking it up as it would have done with a 22. And on this original super soft, very nice grain leather band, it weighs in at 99 grams. So it's a 3-piece stainless steel case. Push-pull crown as mentioned, sapphire crystal as mentioned. It's just a screw-on stainless steel case back giving only 30 meters of water resistance, but hey, pilot's watch after all, they never have great WR, do they? Finishing is very nice throughout as well. Super fine horizontal brush on the case and fine brushing on the lugs. You've got a nicely sloped, high polished bezel and a nicely integrated piece of double dome sapphire. 3 identical crowns apart from that the middle one is etched very small there with the Bulova logo. All are about 6 mil, all are nice and easy to grip. And yeah, it is a lovely, lovely strap. No breaking in required. It is super soft and super supple. That means it's not going to necessarily be around forever. It will degrade quite quickly, this one, I would imagine, but you will thoroughly enjoy its company until that point comes. High polished hardware, again with the Bulova name printed on there, matching the high polished bezel. Genuine leather, Bulova branded underneath. However, I am in the second smallest hole with a 7-inch wrist, so if you've got a 6.5-inch wrist, this isn't going to be suitable. You're going to be punching more holes or swapping it out for something else. Like I said, this one is probably going to suit the 7.5, 8-inch, even 8.5-inch wrist brigade. Screw on stainless steel case back, 4 screws there. Super high polish, so yeah, super scratched already. These things look great out the box, but they look a bit trashed very, very quickly thereafter. Spec sheet around the outer edges, water resistance, sapphire crystal, stainless steel, etc, etc. And being a Bulova, that's part of the Citizen group, that means it has a Miyota movement. This one, or at least one that looks like this anyway. This is the 82S6. I haven't encountered this specific version before. It's the premium grade of the Miyota 8000 series. This one hacks, it has that skeletonized rotor, a little bit of decoration, and no ghost date position. 21 joule hacking and hand winding, 3 Hz auto, so 21,600 vibrations per hour, 6 ticks of the second hand per second. That's not a bad set of numbers, is it? 0 beat error, reasonable amplitude, and that is a perfectly acceptable variance for a budget movement. Normally I moan about these only winding in one direction. You can hear and feel rotor wobble, rotor spin. Not that noticeable in this particular watch though. I think the case is fairly chunky, so it does deaden the noise reasonably effectively. Alright, let's have another quick look at it under macro outside before I get it on wrist. Now, I've already pointed out the 4 different sets of Arabics. Perhaps you've already noticed 2 different fonts used. The inner 2, the 1 to 12 and the 13 to 24, use one particular font. The 2 outer bezels, the minute timer and the hour timer, use a different font. I think it really works in combination, and I love the fact they've kept it all nice and crisp and black and white. Just that inner 13 to 24 in yellow, adding the only colour on the watch. Big double train track there in white, delineating between the 2 different parts of the dial, the flat inner dial and the slightly sloped outer dial with those 2 bezels. Having said that, if you look at it from the angle here, there's not actually a lot of depth. The dial is still quite flat. Not quite sure what they're doing with the 14mm thickness if they haven't done anything to particularly bowl the dial, but there you go. But look at how nicely the whole thing is printed. Very, very sharp. Matte black dial, as you would expect from a military watch. Love the vintage script on the outer numerals especially. Love the 4, love that 5 and the 6. It looks fantastic. It's certainly ticking a lot of boxes for me, this one. One box that it's half ticking is the Lume. You've got a really nice bright blue initial glow from this, but it's one of these watches, it's a 42mm watch, it's going to look oddly small on your wrist after dark because they've only loomed the inner dial portion. That's only about 24mm of width, so you're going to be wondering what happened to the rest of your watch. If we turn the speed up on this one though, you can see that those printed Arabics fade pretty quickly, if I'm being honest. The hands though, the hour-minute hand, do a reasonable job of hanging on in there though. Par for the course for this type of watch. That's it on wrist. I have got a 7-inch wrist for your reference and I think it looks great on me. Very wearable and nicely legible. Maybe if they had shrunk this one down to a 38, the dial would have been a bit crushed if they tried to squeeze all of those Arabics on without the dark space, without the black mat to let the whole thing breathe. Super comfortable strap, but as I said, I am on the second smallest of the holes. I can loosen it up a little bit. Now you know I wear my watches high and tight ordinarily. There's a good reason for that in this case. I will return to it in just a minute or two. Nicely legible, white numerals on black certainly helps that. Now the hands, the hour-minute hand are actually silver surrounds with white centres, and the needle second hand is all white. So decently legible, despite the lack of anti-reflective undercoating. That does show up when you take the watch outside though. And there we are on cue. A nice view of the clouds in the sky in Sydney today and my neighbour's wall, rather than the actual dial and hands of the watch. It's not awful to be honest, and I am prepared to forgive a watch that is supposed to look like it came from 1945 for not having anti-reflective undercoating on the sapphire crystal. I still think it looks very pretty. And on wrist, it is a really nice wear, this one. Super comfortable, slim strap as well. I guess you could bulk that up by putting a thicker strap on it, but I'm quite comfortable with it as is on that nice slim piece of leather. But you already know, as I was complaining about this thing in the first 5 seconds of the video, it is clearly not a moan and niggle free experience. But just as clear is, I'm prepared to forgive this watch most of those niggles. No anti-reflective undercoating, yeah okay, it's a retro piece. 30 meters of water resistance, it's a pilot's watch. It doesn't really need more than that. I guess the fact that all 3 of those crowns do not screw down are the reason for the only 30 meters of water resistance. High polished case back, yeah, who looks at the case back anyway? It's going to scratch, but it's not going to be a massive problem. And hey, I fit the strap, so who cares about anybody with a smaller wrist than me? I really do like this watch. I'm cutting it far too much slack, aren't I? But my biggest gripe involves the crowns. They are just far too sensitive to movement. I mean, the merest touch and they're going to be all over the place. The bottom one is particularly sensitive. Top one needs a little bit of a shove, but yeah, it's still going to move freely. You're unlikely to set this and come back 5 minutes later and find those 2 bezels where you left them. So nobody is going to be using this one to time anything on a plane, that's for sure. And if you are OCD, if you're the type of guy like I am, who always has his dive bezel aligned properly, this one is going to give you the jitters sooner rather than later, I'm afraid. Now, if you wear your watch high and tight, they might stay put for 5 minutes. If you wear it low and loose, they are going to be absolutely all over the shop within minutes. I mean, look at that one. As soon as you move your hand around, the inner bezels are going to be all over the place. So yeah, definitely something worth considering if you do like it all nice and neat. But if you're prepared to cope with those 2 bezels going all over the place after you set them, you can manage the slightly larger 42mm diameter and 50mm lug to lug. And if you can find one at JOMASHOP when they come back in stock for $310, there really is a lot to like with this watch. It's handsome, it's well proportioned, it's legible, it's out of the box comfortable, and I think it's really good value as well. A big brand retro reissue for just over $300 with sapphire crystal and a great strap. Undoubtedly one of the most handsome watches that I have reviewed in a long time. So there you have it. Well done for making it all the way to the back end of the video. What did you think? Were those easily adjustable bezels a bit of a deal breaker, or are you still thinking this thing is as gorgeous as I am? If you like Bulova and you're into their retro reissues, why not check out the Devil Diver, or the best one of the lot if you've got the wrist for it, the Lunar Pilot. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.